Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce. The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
People think that a locally owned and operated appliance store may not offer what they need. Actually, we have trained and dedicated sales associates, expert delivery and installation, professional repair service, and personal customer service. Plus, we have access to a huge local warehouse with over 6,000 models in stock. Crane Appliance. We call the Cape and Islands home. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
The Quarterdeck Restaurant, located on Main Street in the heart of Falmouth, specializing in fresh local seafood and other classic American cuisine, featuring a full bar with friendly staff. And the Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, located in North Falmouth just off Nathan Ellis Highway, featuring catering services with 2 full event rooms serving up classic Italian cuisine. The Quarterdeck Restaurant and Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, we're here to serve all our friends in Falmouth.
February 25th, 2021, Board of Selectmen Select Board meeting to order. This is our meeting in advance of town meeting, and I will call the meeting to order by doing a roll call vote. So when I say your name, just please note if you're present. Sam Patterson?
Patterson present.
Nancy Taylor?
Taylor present.
Doug Jones?
Jones present.
Doug Brown?
Present.
And Megan English Braga present. We also have Town Manager Julian Suso and Assistant Town Manager Peter Johnson Staub. And we have Town Council Frank Duffy here to walk us through a couple of things this evening. So we are going for our business. We're just going to do as we normally do in advance of town meeting, run by a couple of items that we need to address in advance of our meeting this evening. First, discuss, vote motions and reports to town meeting as needed. We have a reconsideration of an indefinite postponement for Article 3. If this board recalls, when we attempted to have our fall town meeting back in November, we didn't have a quorum, but we were able to meet. We had a quorum for our board, and we met in advance of what we had hoped would be town meeting. And at that point in time, there was an issue on Article 3, excuse me, which pertains to the carousel of light. And the issue was that the school committee's agenda, when they discussed whether or not to transfer the property to the jurisdiction of the select board, to the town and the select board, that it had been sort of insufficient in terms of really identifying the piece of land and meeting those open meeting law requirements. And town council helped to guide us a bit on that and make that clear. And so based on that issue, primarily, and there were some other issues around concern about debate going on for an overly long period of time while we were all in person. But based on that, we did change our recommendation to indefinite postponement on Article 3. My understanding, and Frank can correct me if I'm wrong, is that school committee has since cured that particular deficiency. They re-voted, and the vote still stood as it had previously. So the matter is now back before town meeting with that particular hurdle overcome. So I think we do need to vote our recommendation, whatever this board decides it's going to be, for tonight's town meeting. So I'll just open it up if anyone has any comments. Frank or Peter or Julian, if I've misstated any of that or have left something out, please chime in. And otherwise, if anyone from the board, go ahead, Doug Jones.
I see no reason to reconsider.
I agree.
Okay,
I would like to make a positive motion. I think it's a nice idea. And now that they've worked out their details with the school committee, I think it's ready to go.
okay. Is that your do you have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a positive motion that we support Article 3.
The issue right now is just whether we reconsider or not.
Yep.
Oh, I see. Okay, then I vote to reconsider.
Okay, I have a motion to reconsider. Do I have a second?
Patterson, second.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion on whether or not to reconsider? Seeing none, by roll call, please, as to whether or not to reconsider our vote on this. Jones?
Jones, no.
Hi, Taylor?
Taylor, no.
Brown?
Brown, yes?
Patterson?
Patterson, yes.
And English Braga, yes, for motion to reconsider. So I'll take any comments on this, on what we should do going forward.
I guess I'll express my view as to why we should not be recommending this now that we're considering whether we are. It has never come before our board officially. It came to our board about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago as a possibility. We have never done a site visit. We have never seen the plan since then. We've never discussed it actually as a board as to whether we support this idea. And I think for us to make a recommendation without actually pursuing it officially and formally and fully is irresponsible.
Okay. Nancy and then Sam?
I agree with your points, Doug Jones. I would also ask, are there plans, has the engineering department been involved and reviewed any plans? Is there handicapped access is my other question. And I just don't agree with redesignating school property for this type of recreation.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead, Sam Patterson and then Doug Brown. Go ahead,
Okay.
Sam.
Yeah, I just think that, this is in the downtown area. I don't think it's going to interfere with the school program whatsoever, with the conditions that the school committee has actually placed on the operations. It enhances the downtown area in a relatively non-impactful way. I mean, it's no more so than when it was actually positioned on the playground of Mullen Hall. So I think this is something that the town needs to decide. It's not up to us. And all the points that Doug Jones has raised are things that we could easily have checked out on our own. Doesn't require a formal presentation to the select board.
and if I could, then if you're
Go ahead.
finished, Sam, we did have a presentation. They did come to us and showed us what they wanted to do. We have a completed site plan from Falmouth Engineering, which shows in detail the location and the fact that the path is still intact, the pergola is still intact. As far as whether or not we have architect's details, I think that would be something that would come later once we approve their location on this site. So
It's within the 50 feet. There's no 50 feet restriction from the pond.
No,
I believe it would. Yes, it would.
I saw some things as conceptual, never as official plans.
Well, there is a completed site plan that I've viewed, because I requested it, and they did forward it to me.
Why
And
didn't that come to the board?
I thought he did send it to the board, but I
Yes.
can't confirm. If you didn't get it, then I guess not.
We didn't vote on it. We voted on it conceptually 2 years ago. We've not had a vote since the first idea of saying, is this an idea that we should consider?
Well, I know we wanted to vote on it, but the school committee, the wording wasn't quite right, so we didn't get our chance. That's why we had to
Yep,
postpone it.
Julian, go ahead.
I just want to confirm there was a Q&A on Article 3 that was forwarded to the board and to town meeting members that included, I think it was Thursday or Friday, that included a sketch from the engineering sketch on the location. But in that was an update on the question about the wetland regulation with Shivericks Pond, and Jennifer Lincoln confirmed that it will require a notice of intent with Concom, but she indicates that in her judgment, it is a permittable project from that standpoint.
Yeah, I just want to weigh in on, I just, want to point out that I think Doug Jones, raises a good point, which is that, Doug Brown is correct. There are pretty extensive, Mike Borselli has been involved, Carol Kinney for architecture. So they have a fairly robust plan for it. Doug Jones is correct that when it last came before this board as a whole, it was a couple of years ago, it was more conceptual. They have provided those subsequent pieces of information at different times, but Doug Jones is correct. It hasn't been provided as a whole package to our board with that level of detail, although those items I think have been sent to us at different times.
Then how could it be a positive recommendation if we haven't had it presented to us?
Well,
Sam?
Yeah.
Let me have Sam because he had his hand up, and then you, Doug Brown.
okay.
This doesn't leave our authority once it's transferred to us. All those questions that you're asking can come before us as part of the permitting process. It's going to have to go to the Conservation Commission. They're going to have to weigh in on it as well. I think this is sort of a conceptual thing that we put before town meeting to say, is this something that you want to entertain? Because it does, it does require changing the authority for that parcel, that portion of the parcel, from the school committee to the Board of Selectmen. That's the first step, and that's really what we're doing here. And it's, I think it is truly the right thing for the school committee to place whatever conditions they want on it as a part of transferring that authority.
But Sam, if town meeting says yes, are we going to then say no?
I suppose if there's a good reason, why not? I mean,
that's backwards. We should be determining all the legality of it, all the conservation, all those things. We should be determining that's actually doable first before we ask town meeting, what do you guys want? To ask town meeting, what do you want? And then we come back and say, well, too bad. You can't have what you want. That's backwards.
But isn't the actual article just talking about the transfer of the property to when I'm looking at the wording of it, I understand what we're saying, why we're asking to do it, but isn't it that it's authorizing us to then enter into that next level of negotiations where we are not authorized to do that at this point? So those detailed pieces of it, that's the way I read it. And let me just say part of I think the thinking has been, although they've already kind of they put the cart before the horse in some ways, where they've done a lot of the work. They're not going to engage in any further work unless this site, it's a nonprofit, right? So they're only going to engage in a certain level of work before they know that the site is going to be something viable to them. It's running on, the donations and some of those other monies that they make from the ride. So, the way I read the article, it's strictly about the jurisdiction piece of it. Doug Brown?
Yeah, I agree with that. That's what it looks like to me. This is a preliminary step to see if we are willing to accept the responsibility for supervising this license. The school department doesn't want to do it. The school committee doesn't want to do it. So they're giving us permission to do it if town meeting agrees with that.
So then for us to take on that step without having a formal presentation, I'm troubled by that. Second, I'm troubled that this is where we get in trouble with our town. When we say this is what the technicality of it is, such as with the West Falmouth Fire Station. When we did the override for the firemen, they're saying, the town people feel, that was about keeping West Falmouth Fire Station open. No matter how many times we said, no, that's not what we're voting on. We're voting on these firemen on the override. They didn't hear it. Same thing will happen with this. If we vote this now, they're going to say, we told you to put the carousel there. And if we don't, we're going to be defying what town meeting has told us. And we won't have a choice.
We'll have a reason. We will have a reason though. And it's not the first time, and that's just our job.
Our job is to actually have weighed this carefully, and I think it's a terrible location for it. We never talked to our transportation management group about it. There's no parking there right now. I think there's so many better locations. I think we're really trying to shoehorn something that just is not appropriate in that space. And we have never discussed that.
Well, they've tried to find a location. They've vetted 6 different locations, which was also in that information piece that was sent to us on Thursday.
That Peter sent out. I see
It
that.
should come to us. It shouldn't come to an email. It should come to us as a board, officially in a meeting. All this stuff behind the scenes, I think really I worry about it being really, whether it's following the open meeting law or not. It's not. It's not open discussion that we need to have.
Okay, well, I will agree with
I
you.
agree.
The process is not perfect. I certainly will not argue that.
Frank, is there anything we're missing in this discussion that we need to know?
No, I think you've covered everything. It's clear that the school committee does not have the authority to lease the property under these circumstances. Only the Board of Selectmen does. So if it's going to happen, it has to be transferred to your jurisdiction.
Okay. Any further?
One point I'll make
Go
is,
ahead, Doug.
I feel if this is a 3-2 vote in favor of proceeding, the majority rules, we act as a board, we act as a group, and you will not hear another word from me at this evening's discussion.
Well, can I just say that I think you're putting your finger on a piece, and I will take some ownership for that as the person who sets the agenda. I think you're right that it probably should have come back as a more robust discussion with the whole board at some point in the proceeding. So
And I actually mean that way more friendly and happier and gentler than it came across.
No.
I mean, that's, we are a group, we vote with the majority, whatever the majority decides, I feel is our decision to stick with.
Any?
I really do worry about it being backwards, however. I totally agree with Doug, and I also will go along with the group, but I am very uncomfortable with the process of this, and I do not think it's a good idea. And I have a little experience historically with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I could just make one more point, reiterate Megan's point, this really just gives us authority to enter into discussions and negotiate and decide if we want to issue the lease. Doesn't mean we have to issue the lease. This just gives permission for us to have the authority.
And I don't think we should take that on.
Well, that's my interpretation, and I think it's incumbent upon us. There's a lot of people that support this, including the Falmouth Chamber, and it's part of the whole downtown complex and the activity that's going on there. And the issue of the parking, that was an issue, and the parking isn't that far away. And the children that come to this carousel are going to want to play at the playground. They're going to want to go to the library. Let's hope so. That's part of it. It is just a really nice, child-friendly complex in that area. And parking problems are with us, and they're not going away. And so are you saying, what you're saying is, oh, don't put it there because we'll just add to the parking. Well, people are likely to be doing business on Main Street when they bring their children or grandchildren to the carousel. I don't buy that.
And we've also received emails of people who are not for this project, Sam, and people who have asked that we indefinitely postpone it until a time where we can have a real conversation with the community about it, not a virtual one. So I don't think that postponing it right now, it's not necessarily saying no, but it's not going to give, I don't think it's going to give our community an opportunity to present both sides. And I believe that the school committee was quite split in their vote as well.
I guess what I appreciate tonight is it is pointed out very clearly to the town meeting that their vote is sending it back to us to negotiate the license. And It is not a done deal. This is not necessarily going to happen because of their vote, but it's going to come back to us to consider all these situations, these concerns, and that we will be having a lengthy discussion about it.
Correct. If you look at the article, because I just went back to, I wanted to really just look at that language one more time. In the article itself, it's very clear that it's talking about, about whether or not we can enter into a lease not to exceed 30 years. I mean, the article itself, it's in the explanation, it talks about the idea of, you know, I'm just looking to see where it even says the carousel of light. Does it?
No.
No. I mean, it doesn't say the carousel in the article. So, I mean, I think the opportunity for robust conversation in the community remains, because we will still be the final arbiters of that lease if there is one.
As long as that's pointed out to both opponents and proponents, that that's the case, that this is still going to be handled by us to make further decisions about it. And that the proponents shouldn't be marching forward and saying, it's done, we've won, it's going to happen.
Correct.
And opponents can also know, hey, we still have a chance to make our case. I would feel much better about knowing that we're very clear with town meeting about that case.
And I can certainly, when discussing this article, make that very clear that this is the next step in what is still a process that remains to be played out. And I just had one other quick thought, and the other thing is, we know, I mean, but the body is going to vote and our vote matters. But at the end of the day, a positive motion is going to be on the floor regardless, because that's how David runs the meeting. So even if we voted an indefinite postponement, someone's going to put a positive motion, and then it'll be before, you know, town meeting tonight. So, you know, I just wanted to remind that is his policy in how he conducts town meeting.
And you believe Troy is going to make a positive motion, because in the December town meeting, our understanding was that he was not going to.
Right.
And that has changed?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe there's going to be yes, I believe there's going to be a positive motion. Yeah, Peter.
The motion is yours. It's the Board of Selectmen motion. This is a select board article.
Right, but if we make it, if our recommendation is definite postponement, in the December, Troy was not going to overrule us and make a positive motion. He was just going to let that lie.
Right.
And the understanding now is if we make a recommendation of indefinite postponement, he would step forward and bring the article to discussion.
Correct.
Yes, because part of that reason being it was deficient, and we were, I think Troy acknowledged when we explained what Frank's opinion was, he said, well, I'm not going to overrule Frank's opinion. If that's what he's telling me, then I'm not going to, you know, sort of muddy the waters. So any other thoughts on this particular issue?
I would say, you know, as part of our due process, if you will, this town meeting is going to give us the kind of public input that we might be looking for in making any kind of a decision. So I know it's going to be a long discussion tonight, but I think it's important that we let people start expressing themselves. And this is the representative body that will do that. And we'll get both sides of the picture here. So I think this is the appropriate time to introduce it. And I agree that the reason that my reasons for making it an indefinite postponement recommendation was because of the lack of information and the question of the procedures of this school committee. It wasn't because of the validity of putting it there or not, or its value to the community. So I think the reasons have changed, and I'm going to vote to make it a positive motion. And I think, Doug Jones, you are certainly welcome as an individual to get up and explain that you see this as a procedural thing, and that there are more hoops that this project has got to go through in order to actually eventually permit it to go there. I have to tell you, the Conservation Commission isn't represented by Jennifer Lincoln, and they're going to weigh in on this thing, and it's well within the 100-foot buffer. It's not a 50-foot buffer. It's a 100-foot buffer of that pond.
Well, it's a 50-foot no-touch zone. And if they're within the 50-foot no-touch zone doing something, there's just no way the COM should approve it.
Right.
No other organization would get away with that.
Yeah, and I don't think they would either. I mean, COM isn't known for making exceptions. You know, I don't think that they're known for making exceptions, as they shouldn't, because they're you know, what they're doing is not it's not appropriate to do that. But I just want to be cognizant of our time. Any other new sort of thoughts or concerns about this? I'll entertain whatever motion, if anyone has one.
I'll stay with my positive motion to endorse this article.
Patterson, second.
Okay, so I have a motion to recommend as printed. I have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, by roll call, please. Jones?
Jones, no.
Taylor,
Taylor, no.
Brown,
Brown, yes?
Patterson.
Patterson, yes.
Okay, and English Braga, yes. So I will, I'm actually going to reach out in between now and then. I will certainly make that statement if I don't make it strong enough about what the process is going to be. I hope any one of you would clarify that. But when I speak on the article, I will certainly be clear about that piece of it, that it is just the beginning of that process.
And I won't hold Doug to his comment about not saying anything later, because you're a town meeting member, and if you don't think it's a good idea, you're welcome to say so. It's not going against the board.
I agree. You just can't speak for us.
Right.
He knows. I think he was just sharing I think he was just sharing so that we would understand where he was coming from. So, yeah. All right. Next, if we can address the issue of Julian, anything else? I see Chief Smith coming on, and I know he wanted to speak to that particular issue. Anything else, Peter or Julian, before that? We didn't need to vote we didn't need to readdress any other articles, correct?
Well, I'm going to make a motion.
Yeah, no, that's why that's why I was asking before we get to you, Doug.
Okay.
If there was any other articles that were on there that we need to address? I don't think so. Okay.
No, nothing more beyond what Doug has just raised and wanted to communicate about.
All right, go ahead, Doug, if you want to, you have the floor, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm just, I want to advise the board that I intend to make a motion for an amendment on Article 1 to add $200,000 to the Fire Rescue Department budget for potentially purchasing a small mini pumper rescue vehicle. And as I said in my email to Megan and the town manager, I know that we had our meeting in December and the chief advised me that really that's not necessary and he'd rather not have it. But, you know, when I read the McMahon report, the part that really sticks with me is the fact that it says it's the duty and responsibility of the elected officials to make the decision of what level of risk they are willing to put their town at. And I just feel like it's incumbent on us to look at that overview and say, if we really don't have a backup vehicle right now, not just for West Falmouth, but for anywhere in town. If any vehicle needs service, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have to take a vehicle out of one of the stations and do it, and we don't have a backup for that. So there's two reasons for this.
Sorry, before you go further, can we bring Chief Smith in so that he can then be part? Thank you. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening.
Were you able to hear Doug when he was sort of talking about what he was just discussing? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, Doug. I just wanted him to be part of the conversation so you weren't repeating.
Right. Well, so that's the one point. And the other thing is we've got a lot of negative feedback about the fact that the override money is not all going to be used. We knew that going in, and it was well explained at the Finance Committee meeting and our joint committee meeting with them as well. But regardless, it's still, the point is, it's a valid point. And so I think this just reaffirms our commitment to using that money in the Fire Rescue Department budget. So that's my reasoning.
Okay. Let me ask first if there's any, actually, let me do this. Chief, do you want to weigh in or just offer any thoughts on that? And then I'll open it up to the board or anyone else to ask any questions of Doug or share any concerns or thoughts.
Thank you. I have a note in front of you that says, don't say, but I did anyways. So I would say that, I have a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts on this one particular issue because it's been going on for some time now. Personally, I have stated that I don't feel that we need to purchase a truck of this type currently, since the truck that's in there right now is adequate and mechanically sound per our mechanics. We have the availability of an article tonight or, the request tonight to purchase an additional fire truck that will allow us to have a reserve engine. And although it may not fit into the West Falmouth station, it'll continue to limit the use of that engine and will allow us to use that engine in the other stations should we have a mechanical issue. My mechanics have assured me that the soundness of the vehicle right now is such that there's no immediate or imminent, danger of the truck failing. However, I don't have a crystal ball that would predict having any issue occur to any of the other apparatus in town. I'm being asked through this article to purchase a specific vehicle that is not in keeping with all of the standards that we have applied to the new apparatus that we've been purchasing since 2009. And it is a totally different vehicle. And, and for many of the factors that I could explain to everybody, it's not what we're currently using, and it's not as supportive of our current fireground operations, with the vehicles that we have. I think there's other things that we can consider. I think this, you put me in a position to try and purchase a vehicle specifically for that station. And that's what would happen. As fire chief and fire chiefs prior, they utilize the vehicles at their discretion throughout the town. So this, from what I see, this article is to propose buying a vehicle just for that particular station. And right now, that truck fits in the station. And the only limitations with that station are the fact that it's a 90-year-old station. And discussions have to be had elsewhere and in time regarding the new station, that's been discussed. But there are other options. And I would, if this is the amendment that's going to be made, I would certainly speak on that. And I would propose another amendment to make this plausible.
Well,
Go ahead, Doug Brown, and then Doug Jones and Peter.
okay. So now I hope you don't get misled by the letter that was sent, because that interjected a lot more ideas than what was in my motion. My motion is just a small fire truck vehicle. And my idea would be that it would be able to serve any part of the town. It doesn't have to be only stuck in that one station, because I don't want to be pinning you into a corner of what exactly you have to buy. And I don't even want to insist that you have to buy it. I just want to put it in your budget so that if something happens to that truck, you're prepared to go out and get something if you need it.
Doug Jones, Peter, and then if the chief wants to respond. Go ahead, Doug Jones.
What's going to be the turnaround time for the new engine that we're proposing in our current budget?
Generally, it takes up to 10 to 12 months. And obviously, there's the delay from the November to now is going to delay that. However, because we have done so much work in the past with our committees and our staff, I feel comfortable that we'd be able to get this truck ordered a lot quicker than previous engines, because we have a template that we follow and we make slight adjustments based on the current standards that may exist now that didn't exist a year or so ago. And we'd be able to get this ordered.
My second question relates to something you said. And if you had $200,000, what would you use it for? Because you said that you had different ideas that might work better. And I like the idea of giving you some budget window to say, if something happened, let's go out and emergency get a used truck just to get us through 6 months, 8 months, 12 months until we have the new truck in. If you had that leeway, what would you do?
Well, I think that we can do that, because in 2015, we placed a used engine in that station when we had 2 engines fail. And at that time, the department, through town administration, was able to obtain $20,000 to get a used truck, and it lasted 3 to 4 years. I think that we could, adequately work towards finding a used truck that would give us that same amount of time. And I have consulted with our fire vendor to look into this particular issue, and I'm confident through their consult and their support that, we would be able to find something used to go in that station should we have a catastrophic failure of one of our vehicles.
Do you need some money for that?
Yes, I'm not the financial expert here, but I believe that we could propose something that would provide us, funding should that happen.
Maybe
The
that's,
question on if you need money, the answer is always yes, yes.
but maybe that would answer
I don't want
Doug.
to be greedy.
But the finance committee has a reserve amount that it could be allocated, in consultation with the rest of with the select board. So that's not, we could have a quick response if necessary.
But I also like the idea of Doug's idea of saying the town thinks this money was voted for West Falmouth staying open. And if we could designate now some money from free cash to be prepared for that as a reserve if necessary, I think that could go a long way towards winning back some of the concern that the West Falmouth residents have.
Julian or Peter and then Nancy? Peter, you had your hand up a long time ago, so.
Go ahead,
Did you want me to
Julian.
go forward, Madam Chair?
Yep. Go ahead.
We think with the planning and the outreach that Chief Smith has conducted, we're confident that no more than $75,000 would be needed to bring in a used replacement vehicle that would be adequate, working with a qualified vendor, as Chief Smith has already indicated, and that could be done very timely and could serve not only that station, but all other stations. And again, as the chief has mentioned, we have an example of that occurring for a 3 to 4 year lifespan. The prices have gone up, and so we're asking for an additional amount. And I should also note that while Select Board Member Patterson mentions the reserve fund transfer, that would be available to us in the event that additional money was needed for equipment and maintenance. But for a capital equipment purchase, we would need to have a separate appropriation for that. So it would be appropriate, if this does go forward and it's the intent of town meeting to set aside some funds. I think the suggestion is that $75,000 would be quite adequate for this insurance policy, given the considerable outreach that Chief Smith has already conducted, and it would not necessarily require purchasing a new mini pumper and fully outfitting it, which would be an additional expense as well.
I just want to clarify, I never intended to specify that it would need to be new and outfitted. I'm just, my own amateur research on the website, looking at the fire trucks, I just happened to find one mini pumper, and it was a 2019, and it was $150,000, and it was completely outfitted. And I don't mean to act as if I know that it would work for us, but that's what the example that I used. So I figured with procurement and all, maybe I should go for 200 just to make sure it's adequate.
Sam?
Actually, Peter had his hand up earlier. Maybe we should defer to him first.
Go ahead,
Sure.
Peter.
I think it may be clear already, but I just wanted to be sure one of these detail points didn't get lost. And that is that Doug Brown is correct that at present there is no reserve apparatus, but the capital plan, $870,000, would purchase a new, it essentially would replace an apparatus that has been decommissioned. So we would then again have a reserve without purchasing this additional, the additional engine for West Falmouth that we're discussing. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that the capital plan as presented already would provide a reserve apparatus.
Right. It's just that window of time in between that we just heard. So Sam and then Doug Brown.
Yeah, I want to say that, the thing that we're missing to support the West Falmouth fire and rescue coverage is people.
That's
sure. Where the issue is. And the only reason we haven't replaced added to our firefighters is because of the lack of training available. And that point just seems to keep getting floated away because I'm disappointed in Julian and Tim for not keeping that out. Listen, guys, we want to keep that firehouse working. We just can't get the staff that we need right now. And because of the pandemic. That's the reason. And buying another piece of equipment is just blowing money away in my mind.
Well, I agree. However, the one thing that we have been doing is trying to hire additional staff. We have hired 6 personnel in the last few months, and we have offered employment to 7 in the last week, but it's taken us several weeks to get to that process of actually being able to schedule medical and psychological exams, which are required to be to continue through the process of getting to the point where we can get them on board and get them into the academy. It's been a very tedious process. The pandemic, yes. And, I can't express to you enough how much work has been involved by the staff here in the fire department to try and make this work. And right now, by offering these 7 positions, I have 5 other vacancies that I have to take care of. I also have at least 5 to 6 personnel that are out on injury leave, which are not available to us. So
I think, Chief, I think what Sam was saying isn't that he thought that you guys weren't doing enough to have them, but that I think he was saying all of us are not doing enough to educate the public about the fact that this pandemic has, everything ground to a halt. I think that that's what Sam's point was, that there's this myth floating out around there, like anybody here that's on this screen is benefiting from not having new firefighters. Like there's some reason why we wouldn't hire them if they were available. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. Where, you're going to such great lengths to try and get qualified bodies,
right,
on our staff.
And if I can just, and I understand that, and I'm not directing anything towards Sam. My point is that I think we've been very, diligent in getting the message out because we have had numerous questions posed to us by the West Falmouth group, and I've spoken to everybody in the select board meeting, and I've had the newspapers asking questions, and we've done everything that we can to tell everybody. We've just been stymied by this ongoing issue at the state level, and I'll be more than happy to express that to anybody, but it's not producing people as quick as you'd like, and I understand that is what is out there as well.
But Chief, if we had a full staff and that West Falmouth fire engine broke down, we'd have to close West Falmouth because we would not have a piece of equipment that could go there.
Right now,
correct?
yes.
That was my question.
That's what I like that Tug's $75,000. So if it does break down, we can turn around and in a timely fashion, 3 or 4 weeks, get a truck there and keep the station open.
One would hope that we'd be able to make it that quick. And again, the current vendor that we have is called Allegiance Fire Rescue. And they are our fire vendor, and they represent the Pierce Manufacturing Company, which has built our fire trucks. And they actually came to the fire station at my behest, and they actually, at no cost, had a civil engineer look at the station and try and map it out, look at the size limitations, and look at all the information necessary to put into a database that should we have to, get a vehicle, I could call them up, and they have the ability to look in a wide range, fashion to obtain a truck that would fit in the station based on all of the work that they've done for us. So but I'm also limited by the fact that the structural components and integrity of that building, are, it's a 90-year-old building, and there's some limitations with that. But I did want to just mention one thing, that if that truck failed, or bless you, or if any other truck failed, our contingency is, if I have the manpower and the staffing, I'm going to put extra people in the northwest part of the town, and I'll have 4 personnel, if available, to go in the North Falmouth station. 2 would be available on the ambulance and 2 on the engine, or 4 personnel could respond on the engine. So that'll provide more, it would bolster the manpower in that area of town. And we've been doing that since July 1st, and we've done that on several occasions.
Then why not go ahead and get that truck now and have it in store, ready to go? Instead of having to wait the timely 3 or 4 weeks, let's go ahead and put the $75,000 to this truck that he says Allegiance can find for us, and let's have it, put it in storage, put it someplace on the property And we know instantly the next day, the next hour, if something happens, we have something that can cover that West Falmouth station.
And if I could,
Hold on, Sam's had his hand up
Oh,
for
sorry.
like 5 minutes, so let me go Sam and then Doug and then Nancy. So go ahead, Sam.
Most of the concerns I'm hearing from the people in the West Falmouth area is the lack of response time for emergency health issues, right? It's not fire, it's emergency health issues. They want an ambulance there in a timely manner. Will an ambulance not fit into that West Falmouth station? That's my question.
I don't have the answer to that because we haven't housed an ambulance in that station in my career. So I would have to look at the specifications that we have. But the problem that you're going to run into as well is that if you did have a fire in the West Falmouth area, that ambulance is going to show up with 2 firefighters, and that's going to create problems for the labor side of the department, because they have brought that up before, that having 2 personnel responding in an ambulance is a dangerous situation for them to be in. And I concur.
I'm not trying to say that there's not still a staffing issue. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that temporarily, if that fire engine that's currently in the West Falmouth station breaks down, could we not put an ambulance in there temporarily until we get another one?
If the ambulance that I would put in there would be the spare ambulance, and then we're into the same position that we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But
we're held up by the staffing problems. That's my point. It's not equipment, it's staffing.
Right. So even if you had any type of specialized vehicle in that station, right now I don't have anybody. We don't have a regular staffing component there. But with regards to purchasing a truck, I think everybody's waiting for doom and gloom here to say that we're going to lose this truck. And I understand we could get something and just put it in one of the stations, but it would have to be outfitted. It has to have all the equipment placed on it. So the current truck that's in service has all that equipment on it. The other truck would be stripped down bare, waiting to be placed into service. So
can I ask a question about that?
Yes, and then Nancy, then we'll come back to
Well,
Nancy.
Nancy's been waiting. I'll go back.
Yep.
Wait. The question I have is it totally unlikely that a used truck would be already outfitted and ready to go?
Not with all the hose and equipment that we currently have on all our apparatus. No, you just buy a truck that's completely empty. It would have to have lights, radios, lettering, hose, fittings, tools. All the equipment that we currently carry are on our apparatus. And so I don't have anything in reserve, because when we typically when we buy a new vehicle, we end up spending close to $45,000 to $65,000 to outfit it.
So if we spend 75, then we still need another 50. So you really need the 200, don't you?
No, because right now that truck is in service. If I had to take and get another truck in here, I would have all that equipment taken off, ready to be placed on a used truck.
Go ahead, Nancy.
So some of the concerns that I'm hearing is that there is this plan out there to just shut down the West Falmouth Fire Station. We have been talking about staffing for a long time. We were hoping by September we would be able to staff the West Falmouth Fire Station. We've seen the data around whether people take the shifts or not. And now they're saying, and if the truck goes, that will help them shut down the West Falmouth Fire Station, because the staffing's been an issue, and now you don't have a truck there. So that you just do north, which is what you've kind of been doing, right? Putting people over at north instead of west. And so it feels to them like this is just part of your grand plan to shut down that station.
Well, I don't have a grand plan. And, I've just been working to make this function. And I have to say it. And I know Megan and Doug have both heard this from me before. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation in facts that are being distorted by some people that are in this group. And I'm sorry to say that that creates a buzz that's very difficult to try and, dissuade, because people now all of a sudden think that's the way it is. In particular, what was brought to my attention by one of the individuals on the West Falmouth Village group is that the truck's a piece of crap and it's not going to pass inspection tomorrow. And that's what was told to me. And I said, that's farthest from the truth, because my mechanics are the people that I'm listening to. The truck has passed its inspections and it's in very good shape right now and can continue to be used. But there's a lot of other facts. There was also something that was brought up to Doug regarding the station being emptied of lockers because it was going to be closed. And that wasn't the case at all. So I could sit here and be, the answer man on a lot of this stuff, but I have no intention of closing that station. In fact, I, more than anybody on this group call right now, wants to see that station regularly staffed, because when it's regularly staffed, it's supporting my operations for the other stations. And that's 2 additional personnel that can respond in a vehicle, whether it's a medical call or a fire call, to assist our department. And all of the response times that have been floated around and everything, you have 2 stations that have had increased personnel, which have greatly, assisted our operations to be able to simultaneously take care of calls. And for example, also, the West Falmouth station was not staffed the other evening to a fire that occurred by the Bauman's bathhouse. But because of our staffing plans, 2 fire trucks showed up with 8 personnel on it. Before July 1st, let me put it this way, January 20th of 2020, you would have had 4 on 2 trucks. So we have done a great service by working in conjunction with the town administration through the citizens, and we're making things better and we're improving things. But if we have to keep answering questions that aren't true, then we're not going to get anywhere. So believe me, I'm working with you, not against you.
Doug Brown, did you have a comment?
Yeah, about the outfitting and the truck situation. So it seems to me, if I was buying a truck to be a reserve truck, I'd want it to be outfitted independently of stripping down another truck, because it just seems incomplete to, buy a truck but doesn't have all the equipment. So I would think that you would want the whole truck to be equipped so that when the one truck is down, it's getting repaired, you don't have to put all that time and effort into stripping it down and taking all the stuff off and making sure it fits. I would think you'd want to buy a relatively new, or maybe a 2018 or 19 or whatever you find, but it should have most of the equipment on it if possible.
It comes with all the standard equipment on the interior for the cab controls and the pump controls and all that, but all the tools and all the equipment and all the things that make up a fire truck, have to be either purchased or you transfer equipment over. You don't generally see any fire department buying a truck as is. That's all, that you just cut the packaging off of it and you have a truck ready to go. It has to be, fitted based on the department specifications. And we either buy new gear or we can transfer some stuff over, but we would have to augment it with additional gear.
How much would that cost? If it sounds like we had 75 for the truck, how much more would you need to outfit it?
Well, again, if I can transfer some gear over.
No, don't. All new to this truck, because I agree with Doug. We don't want to take another truck out of operation, but if we had a truck all set, all geared up, if we had the 75 for the truck, do you think 25 would then cover the gear?
Sounded like 50 before.
Well, it all depends on what we can fit in the truck, but I would say anywhere from 25 to 45,000 would cover for equipment for that truck.
So 125 as the Doug's new amendment might work.
I feel like it's kind of ties your hands even more to limit to what your best guess is. Why not go with the 200? If you don't have to spend it, you don't have to.
don't want to, hold on, I don't want to get into a position where we're putting the chief on the spot between, trying to argue about, I think he's given us the information we need. I don't want to put him in the spot of arguing either against you, Doug, or, I think we are getting information from him about what those numbers look like. Doug and, Julian and Peter, if you guys want to weigh in on why, on any piece of that for the board's, understanding about why 200 might not be a good idea, if there's some reasoning for that. I just don't want to put the chief, he's given us information, I think, from his area of expertise. I don't want, I hate to have a department head get in the position of arguing about whether or not they're going to get money. That's all. But go ahead, Chief.
As far as Peter and Julian weighing in on the whole financial side of it, the only thing I would say too is that the one thing that creates a problem for me is that you're specifying the type of truck that I need to put in that station. And if I was to have the funds available, it would be a truck that is of similar design that I currently have in there now, and not a mini pumper, not a fast attack pumper. That works in rural volunteer departments. But if all of that was taken out of there and I needed a truck, then I have to try and put in there exactly something that's comparable to what we're doing to support my operations in the town.
Yep.
None of that language is in my motion. It's very simple. It's just a couple of sentences, and it doesn't specify what type of vehicle. Just a small dual-purpose vehicle, and you'll be the one to decide that.
So let me just go with Julian and Peter, and then I'll come to you, Sam. And then I want to try to wrap this up because we do start town meeting in about an hour. So go ahead, Julian, and then Peter and Sam.
Coffee.
I would just say that if there is a desire to have another vehicle as an insurance policy, with all the research the chief has done, I think your target ought to be $75,000. There is some additional money in fire department's annual equipment budget to supplement to some extent, but perhaps you put another 25 in for a total of 100. But I think 200,000 is excessive and well beyond what would get the job done based on all the research that Chief Smith has done. And at this point, I would just encourage all to support the chief and allow him to do his job as chief based on 40 plus years of experience. He knows how to outfit a vehicle. He knows how to command fire stations. And right now, supporting him in this important process is paramount. And I think, as has been noted, there's a lot of nipping at the heels going on, and it's hugely, hugely counterproductive.
Peter, and then it looks like we actually lost Sam Patterson, Peter Johnson Staub, and then Peter Hargraves. If you had a public comment about this, I'll take one. Excuse me. Yes, public comment. So go ahead, Peter Johnson Staub.
Yeah, I was the first reason I raised my hand was to address the point that the chief has already addressed, which is that the town's main concern, they're speaking from the staff perspective, the main concern would be that we do not want town meeting to specify a piece of equipment. So
I don't think they actually can. I've discussed this. We've all discussed this.
Right.
Frank has weighed in. David Vieira has weighed in. That's not within their purview. Although I understand an amendment could get started that way and take a lot of our time.
Yeah, and if the amendment, it becomes problematic. And then, so secondly, Doug, if you have the amendment already written, it will help for a smoother flow if you could email that to us.
Oh, okay, sure.
Peter Hargraves, did you have a comment on this?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
We haven't talked at all about the information that was sent out in support of this amendment, and I hope you won't overlook the opportunity to provide some education to town meeting and the town in general when they make a statement like free cash is left from the spring 2020 Proposition 2.5 override. In fact, we're not going to know what the free cash is until it's certified in December of 2021. And we, according to Massachusetts general law, we can't spend that money even if we don't anticipate it's going to be fully spent, because the voters applied it to a purpose. And I know the chief is working to spend that money and responsibly get the right kind of staffing that we approved and why we did an override. And so you probably are aware of some editorials that appeared in the Enterprise 2 weeks ago, and the response the Finance Committee did this past week in the interest of trying to refute some of this. There was a second editorial that talked about all the valuations of homes being high and a lot of homes being sold at higher values. There represents, by the Enterprise, a further misunderstanding about where our tax base comes from and that we're limited to a 2.5% increase. So the type of discussion that I heard here tonight is very discouraging to me in terms of providing a financial education to the taxpayers of the town. This is a response to a vocal cabal who are not listening to the facts. I've heard the response times have improved. We heard, as we listened to the fire budget request, that there is a serviceable fire vehicle, a pumper, I guess, in the West Falmouth Fire Station. This isn't about the West Falmouth Fire Station. And so if we bought one and put it aside, when our brand new pumper gets here, we'll have an extra fire truck and we'll be in the used pumper business. And instead of knuckling under to special interests, we ought to provide an education. For 6 months, we've had the opportunity to get this on the ballot or on the town meeting warrant. Why do we wait till the morning of the day of town meeting to do this? I'm totally discouraged, and I want to thank Selectman Patterson and the chief. And I'll line myself up with town administrator's comment that we ought to get our professional out of the way of our professional department managers and let them do their job and stop creating these issues. We're making the issues ourselves. They're making it into the paper, and it creates a further distraction. You've just wasted 10 man hours here when a simple response would be, this is not our process for doing a capital appropriation in the town of Falmouth. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Thank you. Any other, it looks like we've lost Sam. So any other, go ahead, Doug Jones.
To respond to Peter Hargrave's concern about the free cash, I guess I was thinking it was coming out of our current free cash situation, not the
That's
future
right.
free cash situation.
Yeah. Correct.
I understand Peter's point exactly. We cannot touch the next year's fiscal year free cash because we have no idea what it is. But our current free cash that's available is where I was seeing this money was coming from.
Yep, and I think Jennifer can speak to that issue if it comes up at town meeting, any confusion about that she does an excellent job about explaining that piece.
And the second point I would want to make is I agree with Julian and Peter completely. I just see this amendment as giving our chief some more capital to spend to do his job. And now, however he chooses to do it, I hope he goes ahead. And I just want to give him a little bit more leeway, flexibility, cash to make it work. But if he says we don't need one, I'm okay with that also. Just saying, you have it in the budget, go ahead and do what you need. And I trust his decision completely.
Mm-hmm. Nancy?
And if I could just,
And I just want to echo that as well, that I don't feel like we're not supporting you, Chief, in bringing this kind of stuff up and having this conversation.
Oh.
So I totally agree with Doug. And
thank you.
And that's why I'm doing it too. I just didn't realize until very recently that you were operating without a reserve vehicle. And I was surprised to find that out. And that's the reason why this is a last minute thing. And if you want to hear the motion, I'll give it to you in writing later. But it's just going to be, Mr. Moderator, I move to add a line item under public safety, small fire rescue vehicle for $200,000, and further to transfer said sum from certified free cash. That's all there is to it. It's not going to say it has to be a mini pumper or anything else.
Well, the word small, I maybe that could be, I think that still limits me because that's not what we would be requesting. We would be getting
a regular size
classic.
Yeah.
How would you identify the vehicle size that's in the West Falmouth station, just for instance?
Well, I mean, it's
mid-size?
No, it's not it's a Class A pumper. It's the typical sized pumper that you would find in any municipality of our, of our stature. It would be, and I wouldn't even want to say Class A pumper. I would say a pumping fire engine similar to design that the fire department currently is using to conduct fire and EMS operations.
Okay.
Nancy?
Why couldn't it be as simple as
Replacement.
to
Fire
be used at the chief's discretion? I mean, why would we even get into describing anything?
That would be fine too.
That's
Well, what-
outside of our purview.
The only
Right,
reason
oh, sorry, go ahead, Doug. Sorry.
The only reason I was going to indicate some kind of size constraint is just so we know it could fit in all the stations.
Well, any truck right now will fit in, well, look at the size of the vehicles that we have right now. They all interchange into the stations. It's just the West Falmouth station that's the concern because, as you know, it's small.
So,
Well,
Chief,
I wrote in my thing.
Chief,
Well, no, but this fire truck, because it was purchased in the 90s, it was of size then for that time frame. But now that we're into 2021, the type of trucks that we currently are purchasing are of larger size for many reasons that, I'm sure you don't want to get bored with, but there's a reason why they're as large as they are now. And, we can make adjustments, but again, I'd be very concerned about trying to change the configuration to the point that we can squeak it into the station when there are structural issues that we have to contend with.
if the goal though is to put this money aside to replace the West Falmouth truck if it has some catastrophic, problem, wouldn't it just make sense for the language to be for the chief to use at his discretion to replace the West Falmouth engine?
Well, the current fire engine that's in that station.
In the West Falmouth station, with no discussion about small or pumper or anything. I mean, that's why we have a chief, because he knows what makes sense there. But we're putting in it that it is to address the issue of West Falmouth, so it doesn't look like it's just additional funds for any, vehicle at any station. And Peter, I saw your Peter Johnson stop.
Yeah, you pretty much said it. So I was, obviously this is an important conversation, but one that we can't really have a complete, thorough conversation on tonight. So the key for the motion is it's to replace the West Falmouth, the engine at West Falmouth, and leave it at that. And then by definition, it's at the chief's discretion.
It's his
If
discretion.
the chief's okay with that recommendation, that amendment, I hope that Doug would do it. This is something we actually vote on. It'll be the finance committee that votes on it. But if the chief's so comfortable with that language saying it's going to replace the West Falmouth fire truck, I think that would go a huge way, both for the community and for us and for the chief.
I agree.
And again, it may not be necessary, but
Hopefully it's not.
But if
hopefully it's not.
But if it's there, I certainly appreciate it. And Doug and Megan, you still, the offer still stands. You still can come by and ride with us.
We're waiting for the invitation. When's it?
Any day.
I didn't want to have you here in the winter time, but if you don't mind going out in the cold, that's fine.
I got boots.
That's fine. Yeah.
Why is it limited to Doug and Megan?
You want to come along? I'll offer it to
Anybody
everybody.
can. Yes.
We
I said
bought-
this is like one of those rare moments that makes being a member of the select board, all the other stuff, really worthwhile.
Be my guest. We'll set it up.
We got to take
together though.
We're here.
Right. No more than two at a time, or else it's a quorum. But
Oh, geez.
Um,
And
No.
we're talking bits this evening.
yeah. So, all right, it's 6:08. So this board is not going to vote on Doug Brown's, obviously it's going to come before town meeting. It was for us to hear about it and have a conversation and get some more information from Tim. Frank, any legal piece of this that we need to know or Doug needs to know before he makes that motion?
No, I think you would pretty much went through everything.
Okay.
Does he need to specify certified free cash from which budget?
He actually doesn't even have to specify where it comes from. It's the finance committee's problem to figure out where the money comes from. But if he wants to specify, that's okay.
I think I will.
Okay.
Okay.
But if Doug Jones's question was free cash,
Where?
if it's from free cash, you simply say from free cash.
Right.
Okay. Anything else from this board? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn, and thanks so much for the discussion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
you.
All those in favor of adjourning by roll call, English Braga, aye. Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, aye.
Brown.
Brown, aye.
Okay. And maybe we can figure out Peter Johnson Staub where Sam is if you haven't heard from him. I just hope it wasn't something really problematic, but we'll see you all guys soon.
Bye.
Okay.
Oh, Peter, don't hang up. Where am I going on in?